3 words destroyed a $150 million contract. You're dismissed, Mike. I'm sitting here now, 6 months later, making more money than I ever did at Nexus Defense Solutions. But that moment still plays in my head like a bad movie. The moment when Bradley Walsh, all 38 years of corporate arrogance stuffed into a discount suit, decided my tie wasn't corporate enough for his vision of professional excellence. Let me back up. I'm Mike Brooks, 52 years old. Been working federal security clearance for 15 years. Before that, I spent 12 years in the Air Force working communication security. Got out as a tech sergeant, went through a messy divorce, and landed at Nexus because they needed someone who actually understood how government contracts work. Not the theory, the reality. See, there's a difference between knowing about federal clearance and holding federal clearance. Bradley Walsh knew about it the way a kid knows about flying a plane from watching Top Gun. I held a secret clearance with DOE Oversight Authority, which meant I was personally authorized by the Department of Energy to verify compliance on classified contracts. That distinction would cost Nexus everything. The day it all went sideways started normal enough. I was reviewing compliance docs for our biggest contract, a $150 million Department of Energy partnership for grid security infrastructure. 3 years in the making, involving 6 states and enough federal oversight to choke a bureaucrat. I was the named security agent, which in government speak means I was personally responsible for verifying that everyone who touched classified materials was properly cleared. You can't just swap that responsibility around like office assignments. When DOE designates you as the security agent on a contract, that designation is tied to your personal clearance file, your background investigation, your whole career history. It's federal law, not company policy. But Bradley Walsh didn't know that. Bradley Walsh didn't know much of anything, actually. Harvard MBA, 3 weeks at Nexus, and already making enemies faster than he could learn people's names. He'd been hired after what I assume was a golf tournament disguised as a board meeting, brought in to modernize operations and leverage synergistic efficiencies. Translation: make everyone miserable while pretending to add value. That Tuesday morning, I was wearing the same navy tie I'd worn to probably 200 client meetings. Nothing fancy, but clean and professional. Same with my shoes, black Oxfords, polished, regulation compliant. I'd worn this exact outfit to DOE facilities, Pentagon briefings, you name it. Never had a single complaint. But Bradley had been reading management books about setting standards and establishing authority. Dangerous combination for someone with no actual authority to establish. The Zoom call was supposed to be a routine check-in about next week's DOE audit. Instead, I got a lecture about professional appearance standards from a guy who probably learned about dress codes from a PowerPoint presentation. "Mike," he said, not even bothering with small talk, "we need to discuss your appearance during yesterday's site visit to the Richmond facility." I blinked. Yesterday had gone perfectly. The client was happy, the inspection passed, paperwork was clean. What about it? He sighed like I was being deliberately obtuse. "The tie, Mike. It's not regulation compliant with our updated professional standards. And those shoes. Clearly not meeting the new requirements outlined in Protocol 14B. Protocol 14B was something he'd invented the week before. A dress code enhancement that nobody had actually read because it was buried in a 47-page email about operational improvements, the kind of document you send when you want to say you communicated something without actually communicating it. "Bradley," I said, keeping my voice level, "I've been wearing this same gear for 6 years. It's approved by legal, it's in the employee handbook, and more importantly, it meets DOE security requirements for contractor personnel. That should have been the end of it. DOE requirements trump company policy every time." But Bradley was just getting started. He leaned back in his chair, fingers laced like he was about to deliver profound wisdom. "Mike, we're tightening standards across the board. Optics matter in this business. Our clients need to see that we're serious about professionalism at every level." This from a guy who'd shown up to his first board meeting wearing a tie with tiny golf clubs on it. "And frankly," he continued, "this isn't negotiable. We need team members who can adapt to evolving standards without pushback. Effective immediately, you're dismissed." The words hung in the digital air like smoke from a house fire. Dismissed. Not terminated, not laid off, not restructured. Dismissed. Like I was a kid who'd talked back in class. No HR representative on the call. No documentation. No opportunity to respond. Just Bradley Walsh playing CEO with someone else's career. because he'd decided my tie represented some kind of threat to his authority. I didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't even ask if he was serious. I just stared at his pixelated face for about 10 seconds, then reached over and closed my laptop. The silence in my home office was absolute, the kind of quiet that usually means something important just broke, and something had broken. Bradley just didn't know it yet. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, just staring at my closed laptop. Not angry, not shocked, more like watching a slow-motion car accident where you can see exactly how it's going to end, but the other guy is too busy texting to notice the guardrail coming up. See, Bradley had just made the kind of mistake that separates people who understand government contracting from people who think they understand it. In the corporate world, you can fire someone and hire a replacement the next day. In federal clearance work, you've just cut the only thread holding your contract together. My secret clearance wasn't something Nexus owned. It belonged to me, Michael Brooks, Social Security number on file with the Office of Personnel Management, background investigation current through March 2026. When DOE designated me as the named security agent on contract DOE GS 47B2 150M, they weren't just picking a random employee. They were certifying that I, personally, had been investigated, cleared, and authorized to handle classified grid security data. You can't transfer that designation like a desk assignment. Federal Acquisition Regulation 9.4051 is pretty clear about it. When the security agent separates from employment, the clearance designation becomes inactive pending formal transfer procedures. And formal transfer procedures take 90 to 180 days, assuming you can find a replacement with equivalent clearance and experience. Bradley didn't know any of this. Hell, Bradley probably thought clearance was something you got from HR on your first day. I walked into my kitchen and made coffee. The real stuff, not the office swill. Outside my window, the neighborhood was doing its Tuesday afternoon thing. Kids getting off school buses, neighbors walking dogs, normal people living normal lives. My ex-wife Carol used to say I thought too much about work. Maybe she was right, but work was what kept the lights on and paid for Tommy's college tuition. Tommy's my son, 19 years old, sophomore at Virginia Tech studying electrical engineering. Smart kid, smarter than his old man, probably going to end up designing the same power grid systems I spend my days protecting. The divorce settlement meant I was paying $1,800 a month in support plus tuition, which is why I'd stuck with Nexus longer than I probably should have. Good benefits, steady pay, and until Bradley showed up, reasonable management. But now I was unemployed, and next week DOE was sending a 4-person audit team to verify compliance before releasing the final $150 million in funding. And the only person authorized to provide that verification had just been fired over a tie. I opened my laptop and pulled up the secure partition where I kept my clearance documents. Everything was there. My SF-86 security clearance application, background investigation summary, DOE oversight authorization, and most importantly, my JPAS, Joint Personnel Adjudication System, profile showing active secret clearance through March 2026. The DOE contract was right there too. 47 pages of federal bureaucracy, but the important part was on page 12. Named Security Agent, Michael D. Brooks, Nexus Defense Solutions, clearance level, secret, DOE authorization, active, and buried in the fine print of Section 4.3.2. In the event of security agent separation from contractor employment, all project activities must cease pending formal designation transfer as outlined in FR 9.4051B3. Translation: if I wasn't there to sign off, the contract was dead in the water. I didn't delete anything, didn't copy company files or take screenshots. Everything I was looking at was my personal documentation, stuff that belonged to me regardless of where I worked. But I did take a moment to appreciate the beautiful simplicity of federal regulation. Bradley thought he was managing personnel. What he'd actually done was violate FAR compliance protocol and jeopardize $150 million in federal funding. And the best part? There was nothing illegal about me not telling him. I wasn't a company employee anymore. I had no obligation to fix his mistakes. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Martinez. Sarah and I had worked together for 3 years before she left Nexus last year. Bradley had pushed her out too, told her she was too detail-oriented for client-facing work. which was corporate speak for asks too many questions about my bad decisions. Heard through the grapevine. You okay? I typed back. I'll be fine. Working on next steps. Sarah knew the clearance game as well as I did. She'd probably figured out what Bradley had just done to himself within 10 minutes of hearing I was gone. But she was smart enough not to spell it out in a text message. I spent the rest of Tuesday organizing my files and updating my resume. 15 years of federal clearance work, 12 years military communications security, multiple DOE certifications. On paper, I was exactly what every defense contractor was looking for. The kind of guy who could walk into a new job next week if I wanted to. But I wasn't in a hurry. Sometimes the best move is to sit still and let other people make mistakes. Wednesday morning, I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my phone started ringing. Unknown number, 703 area code. Northern Virginia. Probably someone from Nexus. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Different number, same area code. Then again. By the fourth call, I was curious enough to pick up. Mike Brooks. Mike? Thank God. This is Patricia Williams from Nexus Compliance. We need to talk. Patty had been with the company for 12 years, longer than almost anyone except the founders. She was the kind of person who actually read the fine print and remembered where all the bodies were buried. If Patty was calling me directly, it meant someone had finally figured out what Bradley had done. What can I do for you, Patty? Mike, we've got a situation. The DOE audit is Monday, and legal just realized there might be an issue with the security agent designation. They're asking questions about your termination. I looked out my kitchen window. Nice day. Sunny, quiet. What kind of questions? They want to know if your clearance status affects the contract. I told them I'd reach out to you directly. The careful way she said it told me everything. Legal had finally read the contract, probably for the first time since it was signed. They'd found Section 4.3.2, done the math, and realized they were about to face a federal audit with no authorized security agent. Panic was setting in. Patty, I said, settling back in my kitchen chair, I'm not a Nexus employee anymore. Remember? Professional appearance standards. The silence on the other end lasted about 10 seconds, long enough for Patricia Williams to realize that her 12-year career at Nexus was about to get very interesting. Mike, please. This is bigger than Bradley's stupidity. We're talking about a $150 million contract. The audit team arrives Monday morning, and if we can't provide security agent verification... She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We both knew what happened when DOE audits failed. The contract got suspended, funding stopped, and heads rolled all the way up to the C-suite. Nexus would survive it probably, but a lot of good people would lose their jobs in the aftermath. What exactly are you asking me to do, Patty? Could you just come in Monday and handle the verification? Just for the audit. We'll figure out the paperwork afterward. I looked out my window. A neighbor was washing his car in the driveway, methodical and unhurried, taking his time to do it right. I don't work there anymore, Patty. Bradley made that pretty clear. Mike, what would it take? And there it was. The question that meant they'd realized exactly how deep the hole was. Patricia Williams had been around long enough to know that desperate times called for desperate measures, and asking fired employees to save your company definitely qualified as desperate. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. The calls kept coming. Legal department, HR, someone claiming to be Bradley's assistant but who sounded suspiciously like Bradley himself trying to disguise his voice. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I went for a walk around the neighborhood, thinking through my options. Option 1, go back Monday, handle the audit, save their contract. Probably get offered my job back with some face-saving story about miscommunication and evolving requirements. Spend the next few years working for Bradley until he found another reason to get rid of me. Option 2, stay home, let them figure it out themselves. They'd probably find a way to postpone the audit, hire an emergency consultant, or throw enough lawyers at the problem to buy time for a proper clearance transfer. Eventually everything would get sorted out, and I'd be just another casualty of corporate restructuring. Option 3, wait and see what other opportunities showed up. I was leaning toward option 3 when my phone buzzed with an email from an address I recognized. James Patterson, Federal Strategic Partners. Jim and I had served together at Ramstein Air Base back in the late 90s. He'd gotten out a year before me and gone straight into government liaison work. Smart guy, good connections, the kind of person who understood how federal contracting really worked. Subject line, heard you might be available. Mike, word through the network is you're no longer with Nexus. Assuming that's true, I've got something that might interest you. DOE oversight position just opened up with our Federal Energy Task Force. Primary security liaison, multi-state authority, Tier 3A clearance required, $315 per hour, flexible schedule, work location negotiable. Contract specifically excludes Nexus Defense and subsidiaries. Interested? Jim. I read the email twice, $315 per hour. That worked out to about $655,000 per year if I kept busy, nearly double what Nexus had been paying me. And the best part was the exclusion clause. I'd never have to deal with Bradley Walsh or his management philosophy again. I hit reply and typed, very interested. Send details. Jim's response came back in 20 minutes with a secure link to the full contract proposal. Federal Energy Task Force, established under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, tasked with oversight of grid modernization projects across 6 southeastern states. They needed someone with my exact background, military communications security, federal clearance experience, and specific knowledge of DOE compliance requirements. The position was everything I'd been doing at Nexus, but without the corporate nonsense. No dress codes, no office politics, no Bradley Walsh asking me to explain why federal regulations couldn't be overruled by PowerPoint presentations. Just me, my clearance, and clients who actually understood what they were paying for. I was reading through the benefits package when my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but the caller ID showed DOE OIG, Office of Inspector General. That was interesting. Mr. Brooks? This is Inspector Janet Morrison, DOE Office of Inspector General. I understand you were recently the named security agent on contract DOE GS 47B2 150M with Nexus Defense Solutions. That's correct. We've received notification that there may be compliance issues related to your employment status. Could you verify your current relationship with Nexus Defense? I sat up straighter. When DOE Inspector General calls you directly, it means someone has filed a formal complaint or identified a potential regulatory violation. Someone at Nexus had probably tried to explain the situation and made it worse. As of Tuesday, I'm no longer employed by Nexus Defense Solutions. I see. And were you provided with proper notification procedures regarding clearance designation transfer as required under FAR 9.405? No, ma'am. I was terminated via video conference for alleged dress code violations. No documentation was provided regarding clearance procedures. There was a pause while she made notes. Mr. Brooks, we're opening a formal inquiry into potential FAR compliance violations related to this contract. You may be contacted for additional information. In the meantime, please preserve all documentation related to your clearance status and employment with Nexus. Understood. After she hung up, I sat back and tried to process what had just happened. DOE Inspector General didn't open formal inquiries lightly. Someone at Nexus had really screwed up, probably by trying to claim they could proceed with the audit without proper security agent authorization. My phone buzzed with another call. This time it was Patricia Williams again, and she sounded like she was having a panic attack. Mike, we just got a call from DOE Inspector General. They're asking about compliance violations. What did you tell them? I told them the truth, Patty. I was fired Tuesday for dress code violations, and nobody mentioned anything about clearance transfer procedures. Oh God. Legal is freaking out. Bradley's in meetings with the partners. They're talking about postponing the audit. Too late for that. Once DOE Inspector General got involved, postponing wasn't an option. They'd want answers, documentation, and probably a few heads-on platters. Patty, I'm sorry this is happening, but it's not my problem anymore. I didn't create this situation. Mike, please. What would it take to make this go away? I looked at Jim Patterson's contract offer still open on my laptop screen. $300 per hour, federal benefits, and the satisfaction of working with people who respected experience over politics. It's too late, Patty. The train's already left the station. I signed Jim Patterson's contract Friday afternoon with my good pen, the cross my dad gave me when I made tech sergeant. 20 pages of federal bureaucracy, but it all boiled down to one simple fact. I was about to make twice as much money doing the same work for people who actually understood what they were buying. Monday morning, I was sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading the Washington Post when my phone started buzzing with texts. Sarah Martinez first. Holy shit, Mike. Turn on Channel 7. Then Patricia Williams. You need to see the news. Then 3 more from numbers I didn't recognize, all saying basically the same thing. I turned on the TV, and there it was, crawling across the bottom of the screen. Dio suspends a $150 contract with Nexus Defense following compliance violations. The talking head was reading from what looked like a prepared DOE statement about irregularities in security clearance protocols and ongoing investigation by the Office of Inspector General. Nexus Defense Solutions' stock price was already down 12% in pre-market trading. My phone rang. Jim Patterson. Mike, you watching the news? Yeah. Any chance that compliance violation has anything to do with your sudden availability? I took a sip of coffee. Let's just say some people learned the hard way that federal clearance isn't transferable property. Jim laughed. Well, their loss is our gain. When can you start? How about this afternoon? The DOE audit at Nexus apparently lasted about 45 minutes. Long enough for the lead auditor to ask for the named security agent, get told that person was no longer with the company, and politely explain that the contract was therefore void pending formal compliance review. No drama, no shouting, just bureaucratic efficiency at its finest. Bradley Walsh tried to argue that they could assign someone else temporarily. The auditor explained that federal law didn't work that way. Bradley asked if there was some kind of exception process. The auditor handed him a business card for the DOE Inspector General's office and suggested he direct all future questions there. By noon, Bradley was cleaning out his office. By 2 p.m., his LinkedIn profile read, former VP of Operations. By Friday, he was completely scrubbed from the Nexus website like he'd never existed. I heard most of this through Sarah, who still had friends inside the company. According to her sources, the board meeting that followed the audit was epic. Lots of shouting, finger-pointing, and demands for explanations about how a $150 million contract could be derailed by a dress code dispute. The answer, of course, was that it wasn't really about dress codes. It was about a kid with an MBA who thought authority came from making arbitrary rules instead of understanding the business. Bradley had fired me because he wanted to establish dominance. What he'd actually done was demonstrate that he had no idea how federal contracting worked. The DOE Inspector General's report, when it finally came out 6 weeks later, was a masterpiece of bureaucratic understatement. Nexus Defense Solutions failed to follow established procedures for clearance designation transfer, resulting in contract non-compliance and potential security protocol violations. Translation: they screwed up so badly that DOE was considering barring them from future federal contracts. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new job with federal strategic partners. Same work, better pay, and clients who understood that experience trumped corporate politics every time. My first assignment was reviewing security protocols for a grid modernization project in North Carolina. The kind of work I'd been doing for years, but now I was getting paid what I was actually worth. The best part? No dress code. I could wear whatever tie I wanted, as long as I kept the power grid secure and the paperwork compliant. 3 months later, Tommy called me from Virginia Tech. He'd been accepted into an advanced electrical engineering program with a focus on grid infrastructure. Full scholarship, paid internship, the works. Smart kid, definitely going to do better than his old man. Dad, he said, I've been reading about this stuff you do. Federal clearance, grid security, all that. It's actually pretty cool. It has its moments. Think there's room in the field for another Brooks? I smiled. Always room for people who understand that the details matter, son. Carol, my ex-wife, even called to congratulate me on the new job. We'd been divorced for 8 years, but she's still worried about my career prospects. You sound happier, she said. More relaxed. She was right. Turns out, getting fired for wearing the wrong tie was the best thing that could have happened to my career. I was making more money, working with better people, and doing the same job I'd always done, just for clients who actually appreciated expertise over image. 6 months after the Nexus disaster, I was reviewing a DOE compliance report when I came across an interesting footnote. Nexus Defense Solutions had been barred from bidding on federal contracts pending completion of remedial compliance training and organizational restructuring. They'd lost their federal clearance authorization entirely. I didn't feel sorry for them. Bradley Walsh had made his choice when he decided that my tie was more important than my 15 years of experience. The federal government had made their choice when they decided that clearance protocols mattered more than corporate convenience. And I'd made my choice when I took a better job with people who understood what they were paying for. These days, I work from home most of the time. No commute, no office politics, no young VPs telling me how to dress. Just me, my clearance, and clients who know the difference between authority and competence. Sometimes I drive past the old Nexus building on my way to client meetings. The parking lot is emptier than it used to be. The lobby doesn't have as many fancy displays. Word is they're still rebuilding their federal contracts division, but it's tough when you've got a reputation for not understanding your own business. I don't feel vindicated, I feel practical. Bradley fired me because he thought management was about asserting control. What he learned too late was that some things can't be controlled, like federal law, government auditors, and the consequences of firing people you don't understand. The whole experience taught me something important about corporate culture. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just letting incompetence follow its natural course while you move on to something better. And sometimes the tie you're wearing is exactly right for the job you're about to get.